About your public lecture today, A New World of Trade, can you just explain to us in a nutshell what the old world was? We are in a transition at the moment, but what kind of new world of trade are we looking at?
Yes, I mean, the old world of trade, the one before, was a world where production systems of goods and services were mostly national, and where trade opening was about lowering barriers, the purpose of which was to protect producers, such as, for instance, tariffs or subsidies, the purpose of which is to equalize competition between a foreigner who's more competitive than you are and your domestic producer who's less competitive. So in order to protect your producer, you put a tariff
Higher.
that compensates this difference of competitiveness. Now, that's the world of yesterday.
Okay.
The world of tomorrow is a world where production systems are not national anymore, they are international. Production systems are along supply value chains who are scattered all over the place with a regional component. Asia, for instance, is the big supply chain. Europe is a big supply chain. America to some extent. So production is all over the place.
Yeah.
And obstacle to trade do not stem anymore from an intention to protect the producer, but from an intention to protect the consumer. Standards,
Yeah.
safety, food, cars, lighters, toys, animal welfare, fire safety. And this is a totally different world. In the first one, opening trade was about lowering tariffs to zero.
Right.
In the new world of trade, the problem is not zeroing measures that administer precaution. It's about zeroing the differences of how you administer precaution. So in the old world you had protection, in the new world you have precaution. And we are somewhere in between, but what this new world entails in the fundamental challenges of how to open trade is very different from what we had in the old world. And I think this reality has not yet percolated in trade policy makers or in trade negotiators.
So who do you think should take the role in trying to enlighten the world that a new world of trade is dawning? When you say we are in a transition time, at what point of transition are we in? Let's maybe focus on ASEAN maybe. What's the awareness? ASEAN is, there's a couple of things that's coming up for ASEAN, and then now there's a new world of trade. Going back to my question, who do you think should take the role in socializing what is coming in the next few years in terms of...
But this, for ASEAN, you had the old world and you have your new world. For a long time, ASEAN integration has been about reducing tariffs.
Right.
Now, ASEAN integration is about having a common ASEAN standard for marketing medicines. Because if you have 10 different standards for marketing medicines, medicines will be more expensive.
Yeah.
So it's a very different game. It has to be politically led, except that its trade negotiators who are negotiating tariff reductions, because they know what tariffs about, it won't be trade negotiators who will agree on a harmonized medicine marketing verification process. This will have to be done by the health regulators and not by the trade people. Although the impact on providing a better price for the consumer will be similar or even bigger. So it's a big change. But this has to be politically driven. I mean, in the case of ASEAN, and I discussed that in Singapore with the ASEAN business people, what matters today is to have a proper to-do list of where ASEAN integration brings the most benefit to consumers. Now, it might not be having the same tariff on cars. It might be having a better system of allocation of slots for airline companies.
Right.
Because this fluidifies air transport, air traffic, which has a huge impact on the profitability of airlines, which then can have a huge impact on the price of air tickets, which is what people care about.
So this discussion remains about the new world of trade still remains in the political level, and it hasn't trickled to the business community, society.
Exactly, but priorities have to be established at the political level. What regulators, what negotiators have to do will remain a fairly technical business, but the priorities have to be established, hence understood at the highest level, which is why you need, heads of states and government to understand how business works, to understand whether or not a company is profitable or not, whether or not price differentials for the region are in the right direction because you have a comparative advantage, in the wrong direction because you mishandle your trade connections.
Now let's go to ASC 2015. That is to take place on December 31st, 2015. The Economist recently held a Southeast Asia summit, and it talks about this issue, that addressed about this issue. What was interesting, one of the minister, that one keynote speaker, Minister Idris Jalla from Malaysia, from the Prime Minister's department, had the idea suggesting that ASEAN nations should, referring to your to-do list, should be now the first thing they should start is assessing themselves honestly, identifying the differences, the disparities, in order for them to then start to fill the gaps.
Yeah, but I mean the same is exactly my own recommendation, because in order to establish your to-do list, you need to start with things which are good for the people and easy to do. And then you go down the list with things which are good for the people, which are uneasy to do. And in order to do that, you need to assess the differences. I agree, but it has to be done now systematically. I mean, economic and regional integration is not a random process. For many times people, for instance, have emulated the European experience. That was great, except that the way the Europeans did it had a lot to do with the old world. They had to move to the new world when they had to do regulatory convergence. And they now are in this, but they started 30 years ago, and they've not finished the business. So it also tells something of how complex and difficult this is. But if you want people to increase their welfare through trade opening and globalization, you need to do that.